to carry the other two arms here and added the correct parameters to them. Now, this view here kind of illustrates where we're going next and the thought process behind what we've done up to this point. So basically, you can imagine each quadrant here is a panel of glass. Now, when we create our panel, it's going to be in a totally different family environment, but I think this really illustrates the point here. So this is how we want it to look. We actually want every corner painted glass and one arm snapping into every corner. Now, if we had not set those visibility parameters, we would have had a full clip with full arms at every one of these. So essentially we would have had 16 arms just in this one little area here. So we really just want to have the necessary arms on. So in this case, this arm, this top left, will be the only one that's on, so we can hold this in place. This top right will be the only one that's on, so we can hold this in place. You'll see how it works when we start making this piece of glass. But kind of keep that in mind as we're working. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this, open up a new curtain wall family template, and we're going to create this panel really quick. So I'm going to keep everything on. I'm going to keep my architecture template open. I'm going to keep this steel spider clip open. But we're going to come over here and we're going to go open up a new family, and it's going to be a curtain wall family. So we'll go curtain wall panel. And I want to jump to my exterior view. So we're kind of looking at this in a way like an elevation view. So when you're looking at this, it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's actually a pretty easy step in this parametric process. Is we're going to create an extrusion based on these four lines here, and these represent the edge or boundary of our glass panel. And in a way, you can kind of look at these as those grid lines that we've kind of worked with in our previous lessons when we were working with the storefront and also the exterior wall glazing system. So what we need to do is basically just create an extrusion based off of these, add material, and add a parameter. So before we do anything, I'm going to add a parameter really quick. And I'm going to make a parameter that needs to be glass thickness. And it's going to be a type parameter as well as a length. So we'll say glass thickness. And I'm going to say OK and OK. So now we're going to go extrusion. We'll create a extrusion using the pick lines. And it's going to be really careful that we're really precise in how we place this. And every point needs to be at the right intersection, and the lines all need to be locked. So I'm going to go ahead and pick line and lock. Pick and lock. Pick and lock, and one more, pick and lock. So we're not done yet. I'm going to go ahead and trim this up because it needs to be a closed loop system. We can't have any overlapping lines here. Perfect. And now what we need to do is go ahead and keep our extrusion start to 0. And you remember that parameter we just set? We'll scoot up here, click on that rectangle and extrusion end, and we're going to make that equal to glass thickness. And I'm going to say OK right there. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to try to make this so we know it's going to be an inch thick. Let's add material before we get out of this window. So I'm going to come here to material, and I'm going to click in the by category area and on the dotted square. And we're going to do glass. And I'm going to say OK. Hit the green check mark. And if you get a warning message, which is not uncommon, that's because when we went ahead and selected our lines, we created this bottom line here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. What happened is, more than likely, it referenced our reference level as opposed to the actual line here. So it's going to be really important that we go ahead and make sure it chooses the line. So what you can do is make sure when you're highlighting it, if you tab, for instance, if we go here, you can tell how the line looks for the reference. It's a line, dot, line, dot. So we don't want to go off of that. We want to make sure we're going off of this as our reference. And then again, making sure we lock it. We could have trim extended, but I'm just going to bring these grips in. So we're going to make it's already equal. I know that's taken care of. We have glass in there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this green check mark. And you're still in that situation. So let's basically start fresh with this guy. So let's try it one more time. So we're going to go back. We're going to create extrusion, pick lines, and we're going to make sure we be careful on how we pick these lines. So there's a line, there's a line. Actually, let's go back and lock. Don't forget to lock. So pick the line, and it has to be the dashed. Pick, lock, and then pick it and lock it one more time. So now let's trim everything up. Trim up our corners. To get this last corner here. Let's make sure we have our material in place. equal to glass. And then we'll also make this extrusion end equal to that parameter we created, that glass thickness parameter. And what we need to do is go in here and add a thickness to it. So that's probably why we're getting that error message, because you can't extrude something at a length of 0, then it's technically not an extrusion. So I'm going to go ahead and move that to 1, should be 1 inch, and this should take care of our problem. So I'll hit the green check mark, and voila, we have our extrusion. No more error message. So there we go. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to go back to my exterior view here. And in the next lesson, when we come back, we're going to go ahead and bring in some of our clips and place them at each corner here. And we're going to use our on-off parameters that we used in previous lessons to only expose the clip that we want in the corner. Spider clip here, and I'm going to load this guy into my Revit family, RFA. It's our glass panel here. And I loaded him in earlier, so you won't see him just yet. So I'm just going to go to Component and bring him in. And he should load up really quickly here. And there he is. So I'm going to place my clip right about here off of the edge here. Hit escape to clear that command. So what we need to do before we go further is we want to make some parameters equal to each other. So you remember we created a glass thickness parameter, one for our glass, but also for our clip. Now since the two are dependent on each other, meaning I need to make sure I have the right amount of space in between these two so I can properly hold this glass in place, and this spacing is dependent on the type of glass, we need to make those two parameters equal to each other. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to Edit Type, and right here under Glass Thickness for my clip, I'm going to go ahead and make that glass thickness for the steel clip equal to the glass thickness in our glass panel. I'll say OK, and we'll do a real quick test. So in theory, since we did that, I should be able to go here and make an adjustment to this. Change this to say 6 inches, and both the span or the space in between my clip and my glass should both increase. So we'll say OK, and boom, it did. So my glass, large, thick, super thick glass, as well as this. So we're in good shape. So I'm going to Control Z just to go back, get back to our original state. So now that I tested that, I know that that's working. So what I want to do now is do a little bit of aligning and some locking. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot this one on over to this side. So we'll say, we'll mirror this one. I'm going to mirror it by picking axis, and we'll pick it over there. I really don't need this one any longer, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. But what I want to do is go ahead and align this to where my glass is actually fitting in between these two clips. So we'll say Align, and I want to align my bottom of my glass to this. So pick your glass first, and then once you have that in place, go ahead and lock it. So we'll see if our lock is visible. You might need to scroll out a little bit. So usually immediately after you align something, the lock will appear. Don't click anything or anywhere just before. If you have to lock it first, and then you can get out of the command. So now that we have that taken care of, let's take a look at this in the exterior elevation view and see what we have. So I'm going to get rid of this extra line here. So we know that it's lined up perfectly here. I just need to line it up vertically with the reference line, and it's going to be important that we do it with the reference line. So I'm going to go with my line. I'm going to choose my reference line first, and I'm just going to hover over my clip until I see that middle. I'm going to say yes, or not yes, but actually move it over, lock it, hit escape, and we're in good shape. So now that we have that locked, I'm going to go ahead and copy or mirror this over to this side. So we'll select this one. I'm going to say mirror by picking axis, and boom, we now have 2 on the bottom. So if we wanted to, we could try to take this and copy it and place it up there or mirror it or whatever, but we're going to have a situation where we may have varying pieces or sizes of glass depending on how we design our system. And we want to ensure that this clip is always going to go in this top corner. So in order for us to do that, we're going to have to make the offset from this clip, from this reference plane, equal to a parameter we're going to create, which will be the glass height. That way, once we specify a certain glass height and it's equal to this offset, we know for sure that this will always be in its correct position. So really quickly, I'm going to create a parameter, and I'm going to call this one glass height, and it needs to be a reporting parameter. So we're going to say glass height, and I'll have that in place. So the next thing, it needs to be an instance, and then we also need to make it reporting. And I'm going to say OK and OK. So now we'll create a dimension really quick, and it must be from your reference line to reference line. Make sure you do it from the horizontal reference line to the horizontal reference line on the bottom. So I'm now going to take this dimension and I'm going to add a label to it, and I'm going to add it that glass height parameter. So now anytime we copy these or create these and move them up, the offset will be equal to that. So if I did want to take one of these and copy it and move it, you'll notice in its properties here, its offset here is equal to the distance I dragged it up, which was 2 feet 5 inches. So we need to go ahead and make that equal to this so that it will always be positioned properly. So I'm going to grab both of these and hold control, and I'm going to copy. I'm just going to move it up just a little bit, making sure I'm going vertically 90 degrees or straight and not veering off to the left or right. But while those both are selected, I'm going to go over here to this offset, click on this little square, and we're going to make that equal to the glass height. So I'll say OK, and bingo. So now we're not done yet. We've got one more alignment to do so we can lock these in place. So I'm going to say align vertically, this one, and lock. Do the same thing here. Reference, vertical line, lock. And now we have everything locked in place. So now we can actually put these parameters to use that we used earlier. But this may bring about an issue I'm going to show you here. So if I wanted to click on this and turn off the right clip, so basically every one of these has to have all their clips turned off except for the clip that's touching the inside of this glass, I would have to be able to do it in here. But I'm not able to do it. I'm only able to do it under Edit Type. And that's because earlier when we created this as a type parameter. And I'll show you what happens. So let's say we did take off one of these, and I'll say apply and OK. Well, it applies that to each one of these, and that's not what we want to do. That parameter is attached to the type, the overall type. So we want to convert that back to an instance parameter. So I'm going to Control Z. What I'm going to do is I'm going to Control Tab to go back to my clip. And this is a common problem you might run into, and that's why it's really important to know the difference between an instance and a type parameter. So this is a good example that will actually kind of exemplify the difference. So an instance parameter allows you to click on one individual item and change that one individual item's parameters. A type means if I change the parameter within that one item, the entire category or the entire type will have that change. And we want it to be unique for each piece. So it's not a hard fix, but it's important to know. So we'll go back up here and we're going to modify these. So we're going to start up here. We'll select this one. So we're at bottom left, modify, and I'm going to change it to an instance parameter. We'll go to the next one, modify, instance. Go to the next one, modify, instance. And lastly, we'll come here to the bottom, modify, instance. I'm going to say apply and OK. Now I'm going to load this back into my family, RFA. I'm going to overwrite the existing and its parameters. So now when I come back here to my exterior view, I should be able to click on one of these and then make the change within this window and not have to access the type, the edit type. This allows me just to change this one instance of this particular type. Now, since we did a bunch of juggling around of these so this might not necessarily match with what's going on here, so we got to kind of wing it and find out how it's going to work. So I'm just going to turn off every single one, and you can still see our centerpiece. So I'm going to turn on one and see if this works. Nope. So we know it's not our top right. So let's say top left. Nope, not our top left. So you can see it pretty much seems like there's no rhyme or reason. But this one actually works here nicely. So we'll go ahead and keep that one. And you see how it just updated only that one. And that's because we made it an instance parameter and we changed it from being the type. So let's do it one more time here. So I'm going to select. I should be able to change it here in its instance. So this time we'll turn them all off, with the exception of one. Maybe we'll get lucky. Nope. So I'm going to turn that one off. And bingo. Got it. So we'll go ahead and do these last ones here. Select. Come back over here. Nope. We'll go ahead and deselect and apply. And it's just a matter of trying to find out. It would be the very last one I pick. So there we go. And we got our last one here. And we'll go ahead and edit this one as well. Nope. No, and it'll probably be my last one with my luck. And it was. Perfect. So now we have those in place. And these are going to be exactly what we need. So now what I'm going to do for this particular panel, I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to save this as soon as Revit catches up with me here. So we'll say save as a family. And I'll save this in our project files here. And we're going to save this as our glass panel with steel spider clips. And now we can access this a little bit later when we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and we should be good to go now. So in our next lesson, we're going to go ahead and create our mullion, or in our case, it's not really a mullion. It'll actually be a tube structure. It'll be a steel vertical structure, and we're going to make it a square one. So we'll learn how to do that in another family project. And if I go to family, I'll say new. And what I want to do is get a profile for mullion, and we're going to base our steel off of the profile of a mullion. So we'll say OK, perfect. And now I'm just going to draw a rectangle really quick. So we'll go line, rectangle, and I'm going to make this guy 4 by 6 just from the start. Just try to get precise here and click. And now I want to line it to where it's centered right here. So the center of this is at the origin there. So I'm going to grab all these guys here, grab this from the midpoint, and just drag it and place it. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go move, and I'm going to go from the midpoint here. So we should have equal distance pretty much going all the way around. So now what I'm going to do is I need to create a couple of parameters. One's going to be a width, and one's also going to be a depth. My depth is going to be 6. My width is going to be 4. So we'll do that really quick. So I'm going to say add parameter, and we'll call this depth. I'll say OK. We'll add another one for width. And we'll say OK there. So now I'm going to say OK here as well. Now we can add a few dimensions. And when we do this, we're going to add an overall dimension as well as a dimension of equality on both this side as well as that side. So let's add those dimensions really quick. So we'll start off like this. We'll go from this to the midpoint to here. We'll drag it out, and we'll make it equal by clicking on equal. And actually, I want to drag that out a little bit further. So we'll do it here. So we'll go there, midpoint to there, drag it out. There we go. And we'll do the same thing going in this direction. So from this side to the center to here, give us that dimension, and we want that equal as well. So we're not done yet. We've got to do our overall dimension. So we'll do an overall dimension. So for this overall dimension, it's going to be 6. And then this overall dimension should be 4. So now what we need to do is just simply assign parameters to this. So I know that my depth, go ahead and set that there. And I know my width. So I'm going to select this, and we'll go to width. So now we're in good shape. But what we need to do is do a little bit of trimming here. So I want to kind of curve or arc these edges by using the fillet tool. So I'm going to come back to create, line, and your fillet arc tool is located right here in your draw panel. And I'm going to click on radius. I'm going to apply a 1/2 inch radius right here. And I'm just going to start curving off these corners. And what should happen is, after we create this, even if we flex this to kind of test out our parameters, our arcs and lines should all stay together and flex as one good piece. So let's go over here and test this out. So if I wanted to change this to maybe an 8, change this to a 6, and we'll say OK. You can see my arcs are OK, lines are good, so we're in good shape. So I'm going to Control Z to kind of go back there. So what we need to do is go back to our parameters, and we're going to save this one. So all these parameters we have in place, we're going to go say new, and I'm going to call this 4 by 6, 4 inch by 6 inch. So I'm going to say OK, OK there. And now all we need to do is save this as, whatever we're going to save it as. So I'm going to go ahead and go here. We'll go save as. And I'm going to call this something obvious that I can definitely go back and reference later, and I know exactly what it is when I get to it. So we'll call this one Profile Mullion Tube Steel. And I'll say save. We'll keep it there like so. And now we just created our piece here that we can actually bring in and add to our project. So in the next lesson, we're going to kind of bring things all together, and we're going to see what happens when we bring in our glass panel with our clips, as well as our customized mullion or steel tube here. And we're going to see what kind of a storefront curtain wall system we can create. So I'll meet you in the next lesson where we kind of bring things all together.